Paul Abbott's Quicksilver, really. When you meet him, he's here, there and everywhere. His mind isn't so much flitting around as buzzing around. He latches onto things, talks about it, latches onto something else, which is not to say he hasn't got concentration. Obviously, anybody who can write as much and as concentratedly as he has concentration. But he's always looking for new things, different things, almost uneasy in his own skin, really, and having ideas to do this. For example, when we were talking, we had a glass of wine in his kitchen, I think it was, that he was talking about training young writers, bringing them on, giving them apprenticeships in his own company, and then he was going to do this, and then he was going to do that, and he wanted to do this, and he wanted to do that. He was brought up in a family of 8 children, and the words brought up are very dubious. He seems to have left the family when he was in his very early teens and was brought up by his older sister. And he tried to take his own life when he was 15, he was bipolar. And then there was this teacher, as so often happens. When he eventually got himself back to school, he said, "Why don't you write something?" Which he did. And he won a prize for £10, which is a lot of money for a 15-year-old. And he made the connection. I write, and it's good. I get money, and I'll be able to live by that. And on he roared.
Can I pour a glass of wine?
Yeah.
Do you like one?
That's a good way to start. Can you just tell us about your upbringing?
Yeah. You know, the kind of strongest memories I have were of being in, you know, the kind of chaos and you know, Paddington Station-ness of the house, which there was no room, but it always felt really comfy. And, you know, bigger places were a bit more scary. You know, when you went in mates' houses who were, like, only children, their houses felt a bit scarily quiet. And the house, our house as a kid was just chaos, all the time, chaos.
We're in Burnley, which is where I was brought up. This is Layth Street, and at Layth Street we lived at number 60, I think. There were 2 up, 2 down. And when we ate at the table, there were so many people you couldn't actually sit down. So it was just like a repository. As fast as you could get out, you would. And just awful lack of space. I did once leave home for a week in a strop, and when I went home for the big confrontation, my dad clipped me around the ear and said, "You didn't wash up this morning." I had no idea. You know, it's just like, you couldn't blame him, because the whole thing was so, it was packed all the time. We always had hundreds of visitors. And I mean, you never quite knew who was family, and everybody's uncle or auntie, because you had to be polite, and then you find out you're not related at all. And yeah, it was leaving home for a week is a massive statement when you're 13, 14, and you just didn't notice.
My mum left in an overnight sequence, and you know, kind of round between the parents, and then you wake up and she's gone. And then a couple of years later, you know, my dad's girlfriend moved in, Norma, who's a lovely kind of part of the family now.
The faster you can get out and leave him on his own.
I seem to remember going, "Oh, where is Dad?" So he's moved into Granddad's.
We can't come over there. What?
And when I look at things now, no one character is what they were. I guess except Fiona, who was my elder sister, Elaine.
No, I'm going to talk to him. We're having a meeting with him, with Elaine.
My mum left when I was 15. 14, 15. And then Dad kind of left when I was 16, 17.
And there was this sudden realisation that Elaine was it. Elaine, the elder sister, was it.
It was a case of having to be mother, so I was.
When I first started writing when I was about 14, I just did it. I don't ever remember making a decision about that. I just found a pad and you write. And for me, it was a really odd thing to be doing, because first of all, you have to learn to type. And going to a typing class at 14 is just about the worst thing you could do.
When's this state of play?
No, we're not even going to start filming that till June.
Right.
And my family discovered that I was writing when they saw a picture of me in the paper. I won a trophy, and it was like being caught masturbating.
Now, and this time if you can just look into that lens rather than at me. Sure. That's it there.
What sort of age did you feel the need to escape from it? Did you feel you needed to be on your own?
I think between the ages of 11 and 15, I had this accumulating depression that I didn't know was there. I just became completely antisocial. Started skiving school. It kind of crept up until it was so acute that I attempted suicide and ended up kind of getting shoved in the bin.
How old were you then?
At 15.
Yeah.
Kind of sectioned in the bin, and it was a real dirty thing because it was like you'd get more respect if you went to prison. And I went in this place which was just the most gruesome experience, and I made a big decision in that I was sectioned for 28 days, and within that month I knew I had to turn around.
How did you do that?
I always imagined I was going to be a doctor. Always got my eye on that. So all the time the writing's creeping up on me, and it's getting more and more compulsive. Longer and longer pieces. I'm writing scripts or longer stories or starting a novel. And I still think I'm going to be a doctor. I'm nowhere near maths, physics or chemistry. It's dead in the water.
What sort of stuff were you writing then? To start with?
Short stories. And
did you send them anywhere?
yeah, well, my English teacher, Bill Bradley, he'd realised I was a good writer, and he sent one of my stories off to, I think, the Weekly News. They used to publish 1,000-word stories, and I got, like, I think it was a tenner for it, but he hadn't told me he was doing that. And, you know, he made my first equation with writing equals money. And that kind of, the second time that happened, he went, oh my God, yeah, that's, oh right, you do that, you can get a wage. And then when I wrote the first radio play, by the time I'd been commissioned to do the second one, I realised I could pay my rent from one play for the whole year. And you go, that really is a job.
So were you about 20 when you...
20 when
when you sold your first radio play?
Yeah, I think it was a 30-minute afternoon theatre for Radio 4, and I got like 600 quid for it. But and the real shock was when they repeat it, you get the same money again. I go, oh man! And then when you do they then commissioned a Monday night play, which is a 90-minute piece, and that repeated on the Saturday. So you got double the money. It's $2.5 grand for a play. Wow, you know. And when I went to meet them, I was clearly not right because I was way too young for that team, and you know, it's kind of spiky hair and 3 earrings and all that. And they didn't personally like me, it was obvious. And but then I was asked to do a transcript. I did a brilliant transcript. Read it recently, it's as good as anything I've ever written. And I worked really hard, and I thought, oh, I'm going to show you. And I did, and then the minute they got the script, they offered me the job that they'd turned me down for. And that was like a 15 grand a year job. Like, it was the first job when you're 23, and I was just so proud of it.
He loved his job. Absolutely love it. You know, when we were, for the very brief period, both Paul and I worked as storyliners on Coronation Street, and he just loved it. And we'd work on old typepresses. He'd be sat at one side of the story room, I'd be sat at the other. And I remember him coming to work this particular time with, you know, he'd been involved in an attack. I don't know if you've seen this. He has a scar on his face. That came from that time. Literally, he was beaten to a pulp. I mean, he had broken ribs. He had his face was cut. He had, you know, his hand was damaged. He had that many wounds. He turned to work the next day. He looked like the Invisible Man. Sat there with his finger, with, you know, all bandaged up with one finger on the. He wouldn't break work.
What were the good bits about writing for Coronation Street? And what were the bad bits?
Well, I think because I really felt when I worked on it that it was telling a lie. The whole show is you know, it's got a kind of cling film on it, and you know, it's kind of shrink wrapped and confected for an audience that don't want to kind of engage with real life. You know, the ones that don't take drugs watch the street. But it taught me everything about writing character, because when you're one of the arse end of the writing team, you're looking at people get, oh, he's got the rape, he gets the siege, Jack gets a ladder. And so you're desperate to get to that kind of A-list, and eventually you do. But by the time I did, I'm going, please don't give me the rape. I just want the Jack gets a ladder, because then you could do anything with character writing inside your episode. And it was a real nourishment to have to write nothing but character for 23.5 minutes, because there were no plots. I mean, now and again you get a plot that was just big enough to hang on to, but it really taught you how to write people talking properly.
You know, let's face it, Coronation Street is a really high-quality, ongoing drama series. But if you're a writer that has more in you, has a lot to say, and is burning to say other things and can, then there is a time when you need to leap off into the abyss and dare to do it. Stand up on your own 2 feet and without the comfort blanket of Coronation Street. And I think for a while, Paul held on there. And I remember having conversations with him saying, Paul, you should leave.
What took you to Cracker?
One of the worst days of my life, because I'd been asked would I like to work on the second series of Cracker with Jimmy McGovern. Well, it's like you've got 1,000 people behind you going, no, pick me, pick me. You know, it's kind of nourishing at any cost. And, but it was at any cost. I think my salary on Coronation Street that year, I look back in my records, it was about 189,000 as one of the top writers on Coronation Street. On Cracker, my salary was 52,000. But you've got a tax bill from the year before, which kind of wipes that out. You're going, I've no money, I've got no money. And it was the best and worst year of my life. And I learned so much in the space of 6 months that I'm so grateful for. But I had 5 stars over one eye. Oh, I looked like something out of Star Trek, getting about 3 hours. And I remember halfway through thinking, oh, because you taught to kind of recap. I thought, I can't be bothered, I haven't got time if they're not sticking with it. And that's the way it was made by David Yates. It's just, I'm not going to explain it to you. We're not going to brief you every single ep. You know, if you watch it all, you get air miles, and it makes people watch stuff like it's not there for their confection. And if you cross-arch any piece of telly, you're kind of suggesting to the audience that you're a bit nervous about the quality of it. And we just kind of, it's not arrogance, it's just kind of creating a life that looks like to the audience it's there only for the hour. You know, if you turn away, it's carrying on without you. And not enough telly does that. But
Do you feel the Shameless does that?
yeah. I mean, but State of Play taught me how to write. Taught me how to write Shameless, really.
Shameless was the most bottom-up view of the newly liberated working-class life on television, which is one of the great things that television has brought to the British public, a view of most of themselves who had been hidden before. In his case, it was shameless, really. It was almost unwatchable, some of it, but as it was redeemed, as he always is, by this terrific sense of humour. And he's one of those for whom the road to excess leads to the palace of some sort of, well, if not wisdom, at least understanding and fun. And he's very, very good at the join between almost slapstick and almost total tragedy going on at the same time.
Shameless was more like the truth, because you didn't know you had to apologise for what you were.
There are some people, one or two people, who say that Shameless glamorises crime and drinking and glamorises the subject it occupies.
And? No, but you know, they wouldn't argue with that. You know, if they, you know, it's like, Frank, or give us a pint and a couple of these. You know, that's what they do. And you know, it's like, I don't want to glamorise it inside. It's not my perspective that's the way to make it work. But you know, Frank's totally derelict. The fact you don't want to kill him is a really sophisticated piece of processing on the audience's part. That, you know, he should be slaughtered for doing what he does.
You don't write every episode of Shameless, do you?
No. Yeah.
You make a special point of encouraging and championing young writers.
Anyway, Jimmy, again, but better.
Is that because of your own experience?
But the Frank ones are. Frank's always the heart. You know, it's the easiest to write. You know, once you get the handle on him, because you just make him believe every word he says. It is, but actually, you know, people think it's altruism, and it's nowhere near that. Because if you're looking at something like Shameless, where you know you can't do 3, 4, 5 series, and you start to look at a pool of available writers, and it's the same pool that you looked at last year, and it never grows. And if you don't grow it, you know, I mean, if every writer took an apprentice for a year and tripled the kind of amount of writers in the system, the whole thing gets healthier. I'm always shocked by how selfish writers are in giving help to other people. I think they love talking about it, but the minute anybody gets about shoulder height, they start knocking them on the head and shrinking them again. And they always create an apprenticeship that's about 3 times harder than the one they actually had themselves, and talk them out of coming into the industry. I loved it. The other day there was a bloke saying, I don't think he's quite right for the job, you know, he's no experience. I said, well, you had none when you came to me, but you got in, I got in. And they forget, it's one of those industries that people feel really territorial about. But yeah, I mean, what you're doing is teaching them how to find their way through a format, not how to write like you do.
You run your own company, you head up various other projects, you executive produce others.
Is Laurie in there?
You're a successful television wheeler dealer and you keep writing. Did you intend to go in all these directions?
Well, no, since I never intended to be a writer in the first place. You know, I think all the best things I've ever done have found me rather than me finding them. We're in the office of my house, top of the house in South Manchester. It's a lovely place to work. I think this is about 10 hours of my day working here. Quite often when I'm pulled down to London, I can't wait to get back to this bit, which is the bit I trust to kind of germinate ideas. It all sounds really wanky when you have a place where you do that, but you do. I used to be surrounded by loads of things. You know, every time you got an award, you put it up in the office, and then when you're writing a really shit scene and you're looking at BAFTA, you go, no, it's got to go. And you know, loads of times, you know, I experimented with what should be in an office to inspire you. I think the answer is nothing. The best days are when you come into an office and unplug every phone. Don't buy paper, don't check emails, and you instantly tie in with the last thing you wrote the night before. But with loads of new ideas that your brain's not, you know, you've been working on overnight. And but it's such an instinct because you're on your own to see the outside world first. And it's always a mistake. Reading the paper, you know, the minute you've got somebody else's story in your head, I mean, you have to connect with the outside world, but not first thing in the morning. Putting the stuff down first off is a bit boring, because you know it's not you writing, you're just telling a kind of story, you know, it's like putting the undercoat on. And it's the bit that everybody wants, but it's the bit you're least proud of. Because the minute you've got a script, you've got an object, you've got a unit of currency in the media world. And but the bit beyond that is the best bit. You know, the most exciting kind of experience when you know you're pulling it off. And I think now and again when you're writing and you're getting a character right, and it's like dope. You know, you kind of sit there and you could shake with excitement about the fact your script is going so well. And there's nothing like it. It's a real adrenaline kick.
Have you any idea where your career is going to go from now? I mean, it's rocketed away.
Well, I get so many ideas that I feel really driven about. I think either I'll keep writing the same stuff, which I'll be really pleased with, or I'll just find a different, maybe I'll write novels. For the first time, I've got a novel in my head, and it's never happened before, because you know, no, it's not a novel, it's a film. You're just saying it's a novel because you want to write a novel. And this one is like, it's not a film, it's not a series, it has to be a novel. And that's a really weird feeling, because you know, I feel like I'm being taken somewhere by accident again, but I love it. You know, it's like when you write stuff like Shameless and State of Play, and people can say, oh, you're top of your game. God, that's a really hard thing to come to terms with, because either you've got to fall or, you know, die. and I'm going to do neither. And I just keep looking for hard ideas that I can pull off in telly. And they probably will only match Shameless or State of Play, but I'd be fine with that.